My Burbank Talks presents another edition of Ask the Mayor, a monthly forum giving the Mayor of Burbank an opportunity to answer questions from you, the listener, and address issues important to the city of Burbank. Now, let's join our hosts as they welcome the Mayor of Burbank.
Hello, Burbank. Craig Sherwood here with you once again, along with, of course, Ross Benson.
They say tally-ho, let's go.
That's a little shorter than usual.
Well, we have a different show tonight. We have, you know, the Mayor of
This
Burbank.
is one of our favorite shows.
We have the Mayor of Burbank.
It's Ask
here.
the Mayor with Nick Schultz. Mayor Schultz, how you doing?
I'm great, guys. How you doing?
It's all good. I enjoy doing this,
Me too.
and I appreciate you coming in here. In fact, it was nice that we were pretty busy, and you actually say, "Hey, when are we doing our show?" Which I appreciate. That's good. That, it shows that you want to do it, and I think it's important that people, you get to talk to people like this, in a different setting than the Brown Act.
I love it because we can have more of a dialogue and a conversation. And you guys know, we're up there on the dais. Folks are talking to us for a few minutes, and we're so limited in how we can respond. So I appreciate the forum. And I mean, hey, I got to find some way to, take advantage of an empty Tuesday night. So.
Well,
I have Joe McDougall here sitting in with us.
You got my heart racing there for a second.
well, I'm out at a ton of events, and people say to me, we're the only source that they hear, the leader only once a week, and he specific articles. We kind of been involved in this for years.
Oh, yeah.
So we know, the community and what they want. And this is just, again, another forum for people to be able to talk to their mayor.
Well, and I just, not to belabor the point, but I just want to thank you guys because, look, with the internet and the advent of social media, you guys know this. The hard part is there's so much information that's spread out there, and yet so much of it isn't fact-checked, isn't really subject to good journalism like you guys try to do. Everybody who has a Facebook page can have an opinion and present something as fact, and yet both of you and your whole staff really try to, ferret it out and try to give Burbank good, reliable, accurate information.
Well, you just said a very good point because I know Patrick, I know our community development department, people don't understand what it takes. You just don't go wave a wand and you have a new, structure here. No, things all over Burbank. Last week, the Rite Aid, Magnolia and Hollywood Way, new business. There must have been over 150 people commenting, oh, I wanted this there, I wanted that there. The city looks at that. Mm-hmm. The business that's going in there, we happen to know quite well. Longtime 40-year Burbank business. They started off in Magnolia Park. They grew. They've continued to grow. And like Rob, the owner, says, the godfather of sports cards, they are the biggest. You go on the internet and it says Burbank Sports Card. Well, he loves the location. If he can afford that building.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been there. We've covered stories there. And I've seen celebrities. It's amazing when a basketball player walks in to trade cards with them.
They have an amazing online business, too, all over the world.
Right. So it's Magnolia Park. I am part of that board. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to see them there. It's, like I said, a longtime Burbank business. And, it's hard to, when, I drove by coming here, the 99-cent store. It's now got a big sign up there. It's going to be the dollar store.
Yep.
And it's already being gutted and turned over quick. We've seen properties sit for months and months, and people wonder, and then the weeds grow. Yeah. But both of these, and listen to Rob, he's keeping his world up on the card shop. He says, look at this parking lot. We can have pickleball tournaments out here. We can have a basketball game out. He loves, it's a good sized parking lot, 70 spaces, but It's from one street to the other is all his.
Well, and we do need more pickleball space. We do
but not more weeds. By the way, the weeds I talked about in a couple shows,
they're gone.
At Clark and Hollywood Way. They got all mowed out, which I was very impressed. Like 6 foot high weeds in the parkway. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. So I appreciate whoever went out there and did
listen
that.
to this show because I do know that I've complained about some things around town. And, a couple weeks ago, I complained right about you get off the freeway at the new underpass there.
Empire.
And that where they're building that appliance store, graffiti on that fence and all. We commented here, and that green fence got fixed the next day, and I'm going, wow. So somebody's listening to us. But you know what? You guys know Craig and we love the city.
Yeah, you do.
We have every inch of it. We have covered every inch of it. We have, we go back to days of doing park patrol where we would literally go out and we could tell you what alleys are and what parks are. We were out there all night, and we know the city and we love it. And that's why we're continuing. Craig and I both feel, and I've said to you, that's why we've stayed in the world of media. Burbank deserves its news source.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it.
By people who know the city.
That's right.
Yeah. And exactly.
Well, you guys are doing a heck of a job.
Well, we have questions.
Okay.
We did get some questions.
And we're gonna start off with the last meeting, and they want to talk about the ceasefire and why you believe that Burbank needs to weigh in on this, and then how many hours it took. In fact, the meeting did not end until actually 2:51, but you guys were down like 2:30 on this topic. So why are we worried about what goes on in that war in Israel, and are we going to solve, Mike? Are we going to solve Russia and Ukraine next? I mean, why are we involved in that? Why are we taking a lot of staff time up and a lot of city time, and all we've got to pay all those people to be there? And it's a long time.
I just want to tag on to that part of your answer.
Yeah.
What you guys did, do you think there was an extra hour, 2 hours of people talking about that? Do you think with what you did, we're still going to get those people every week? You've done what they wanted.
I'll go to Glendale now and start with Glendale probably.
But,
Yeah, I see your point. Great question. Let me unpack it a bit. Look, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much from what I said on the dais. Look, I have no doubt in my mind that this statement, folks are calling it a resolution. It's not. It was a statement of the council. I don't think it's going to lead to world peace. As much as I wish people would read it and listen to it, the reality is that's not what this was about. This really started with some Burbank residents. And look, full disclosure, yes, there were people that didn't live in Burbank that came out to that meeting to comment about it. But it started with a group of Burbank residents who came to council consistently over the last 8 months. Councilmember Anthony, as is his prerogative, decided to agendize it. And so we had to have at least this initial conversation because under our rules and procedures, we can talk about whether Councilmember Anthony should or should not have requested it, but he did. So we had the conversation. I am very comfortable with the statement that we approved. I thought that, starting with the vice mayor and myself, we tried to take a statement that we thought captured the majority of where the community was at. I thought that Councilmember Mullins' additions in her statement that she put together were really great, really impactful.
She personalized a lot of things in that.
She really did. And, I felt the conversation that the council had overall, it was good, it was balanced, and what we came out with, I think at the end of the day, is a statement that captures not all, but where most of the community's at. And so just to round out my answer to you, Craig, look, is it going to lead to world peace? Probably not. But what I hope it does is leads to a good dialogue in the community about what's happening abroad, which is impacting at least segments of our community, folks that live here with family on all sides of the conflict that live in the Middle East. But more importantly, I hope that in some small measure, it can lead to some sense of healing. That, yes, even though we are the Burbank City Council and our mission is always going to be to run a good city and to solve our issues here. Yes, like everyone, we see bloodshed, we see atrocity across the world. And of course, we should pray for peace. We should pursue that. To your quick add-on, Ross, and then I'll be quiet because you probably got follow-ups. Look, as far as whether folks are going to continue coming back or not, I don't know. But what I would say is we have devoted a substantial amount of time to the conversation. We have made our statement very clear. And if folks want to come back and continue talking about it, that's their right in the public comment period. My belief is that we have discussed this extensively. We've made a very clear statement, and I don't know that I have personally anything further to add on it. I'd love to continue to get back to basics and talk about keep having safer streets in Burbank and adding more housing, all those
Burbank issues. Like Craig and I've said, we have a slew of issues here in Burbank.
Sure.
Foreign policy is not on the top of that list. I've talked to Justin, our city manager, and he's never gotten involved in, world peace and foreign affairs like this. You did what you had to do. Now my thing is, let's move on. You're right. We're probably going to have some stragglers.
Sure.
Because there's still people that disagree. Have we not found there's people out there who will disagree just to disagree?
Right. And the one other thing I would add, Ross, is if, some of your folks are listening to this, just to put them in the mindset of one council member, here's what I would say. Part of the reason that I felt that we should make a comment on it is for the sake of consistency. As you guys remember, even though there was discussion about whether we should or should not, prior councils have recognized the independence and sovereignty of the Republic of Artsakh. They've rescinded a friendship city status with Hadru. We have weighed in on international issues. And I don't know if I was clear in making that point at the council meeting, but that was my concern. If we begin to pick and choose, this is an international conflict worthy of us weighing in, and this one is not, it creates a lot of dissension and distrust in the community. I think the better approach is, if we're going to do it, great. If this or future councils decide we're just not going to comment on foreign policy at all, that's great, but it needs to be a uniform approach, because you can't be picking and choosing which conflicts are worth weighing in on.
Well, and I think with all of you agreeing on with what was written, it almost needs to be printed out and put out in the foyer, because you've made the decision. You talked about, you did what, you guys all said you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. People that come in and want to speak about, this is what we decided. We're not going to bring it up we're not going to open it up every council.
Yeah.
And so forth. So like I said, we have a lot more great stuff to do in the city. And
so I have a couple of follow-ups.
Please.
Number one, and at the end of every meeting, it's okay, council's pleasure, what would you like to put on the agenda? Does anybody have anything to bring up? Is that something that somebody could bring it up and they'd have to have a second to say, let's put that on the agenda? Or is that, I'm not sure how the Robert's Rules of Orders and all those work. I mean, could you actually have it where, well, I want to talk about, the war in Russia, and
sure,
they'd need to have, two people, have to have a vote to put that on the agenda. I mean, is that something that we could do, or is that not part of how it works?
Craig, that's a great question. That is absolutely something that council could change. So we're not bound by Robert's Rules of Order, but as you guys know, we have a resolution. We'll actually be bringing it up in 2 meetings time when we'll be talking about how council runs meetings. But we have a standing resolution which governs our procedures. Now, historically, as you both know, we've always empowered individual council members to be able to add something to the agenda. But I'd be remiss if I didn't point out some of our boards and commissions, like Police Commission, for example, do require you, if you want to add something to the agenda, there has to be a request by one commissioner and a second. And so based on some of these recent topics, when the council considers that item in a few weeks' time, I would fully expect at least one of my colleagues to say, you know what, maybe we should require at least 2 council members to say, this is an item of importance. I want to talk about it. So that can absolutely be changed. And if that were put in place in say a month's time, a couple meetings from now, that could go into effect immediately. And I think that I would imagine that we probably will talk when this comes up about this experience on this item and other recent topics, and whether we feel we really should continue to allow one council member to put anything they want on the agenda, or whether it would be a better practice to require a second.
Well, I think when you say that, some council members, when you listen to the end of the meeting and they want something put on the agenda, sometimes it's a self-thought. Mm-hmm. And you could tell sometimes community will drive them to wanting something done. Mm-hmm. So I get where it's good that, and again, that's probably taken up during your goals meeting of how council meetings are run, because we've watched for years.
I think a check and balance system is kind of a little,
Yeah.
And one more thing on that also, kind of changing of the rules. Oh, what was 7 or 8 years ago, the geriatric council, the city council, it was a lot of older people back then. And they put this rule in saying, at 11 o'clock, we've got to stop and take a vote if we want to keep on going. Now, as long as you've been doing this, has anybody ever said, no, that's it, we're stopping, we're going home, meeting's over? However that rule got put in 7 or 8 years ago, why doesn't we say, you know what, we're taking that rule out because it breaks the, it breaks the flow of the meeting when all of a sudden, well, hold on to that thought, we've got to do this now. Well, it's like, well, do we have to do this now? Let's get rid of that. I don't think it's in the BMC, so.
No, I'm with you. I would support getting rid of that rule. I think that, look, if the council were meeting every single week, maybe there'd be an argument for saying, okay, we've gone late enough tonight, we can take this up next Tuesday. As you and all your listeners know, we meet a couple times a month. And so I've never supported, and I've never seen a colleague say, I want to cut this conversation short. At this point, I think it's an antiquated rule that is just creating an unnecessary roadblock, an unnecessary delay in our meeting to interrupt the conversation, to extend it past 11. We should get rid of that rule.
I've heard you say, I'm here as long as it takes.
I was here till 3 a.m. That's right. I got you.
Well, that's it exactly. And people don't realize sitting through a couple hours of public input where people are swearing at you and nasty. It's changed now. I mean, I agree, they have concerns, but listen to them for a couple hours. Sometimes you can only take so much abuse.
Well, not necessarily the thrust of your comment or question, Ross, but one thing I do think your listeners would find interesting is, having been on the council 4 years, I can see the fatigue set in on Zazette, on Tamala, for example. 6-7 hours into a meeting, like I can see it on their face. One of the questions I get is, how do I stay, at least by appearances, spry and really engaged? Well, if you see me in the meeting, and I think every mayor does it differently, I'm getting up, I'm talking to Joe, I'm collaborating with Kimberly. My attention is so focused on trying to run a really tight ship in a good meeting. I kind of lean into those administrative responsibilities to get up, get the blood flowing. That's why sometimes you'll see me, I'll get up, I'll grab a snack. I'm listening to public comment, but I'm walking. I just try to stay really on my toes, really alert. Because you're right. I mean, sitting there for 4 hours of public comment, it's easy to zone out. And I have my personal tricks to try to stay engaged because I want everyone to feel like they have my attention.
Well, it's funny because we talked about it on our show last night. My Burbank is going to buy some containers of Ensure and put our label on them, myburbank.com, and put it in that little cooler that you guys have for you guys.
What is nice about the meetings is that you've actually got people now that buy in on the jazz hands.
Oh, I love it.
You don't have to tell them anymore. They just do it now. They don't. And when you're listening at home, it's good not to have to listen to all that clapping. So it's.
You know what I will say? That is, I didn't know where it was going to go.
That might be your legacy on the city council 20 years from now, and people are going like that. Where'd that come from? Well, we remember that.
I got to say, it's been a wild ride the last 4 years, but I had a chance to watch Sharon a little bit, Bob, Jess, Constantine, and I saw how they all handled the audience. And so I just try to approach it with lightheartedness, humor. I try to just take the tension down in the room, and I have found jazz hands get everybody. You can't do it without kind of laughing and feeling a little goofy, and it makes people ease up and relax.
Absolutely. Let's move on. And by the way, I had to fix the mayor's microphone during the show. There, his bass was somehow turned down, so now he's sounding like his full.
Wait a minute, isn't there a song like that? I love that bass. What's
all about that?
All about that bass. There you go.
Ross, you into rappers now, or what's going on?
No, I happen to be. What singer is that?
You're just a huge Meghan Trainor fan.
Meghan Trainor.
There you go.
Now you should have her on the podcast. There you go.
She has a beat, and I just love all her songs. She's
fantastic.
She is, and it's got that beat. So you add your bass.
Okay, well we touched on it a little last month, and of course it's still going on now. And we're talking about rent evictions, no fault rent evictions, and the ordinance you're working on. Mm-hmm. We thought you're about ready to pull the trigger, and the public made some good suggestions. Mm-hmm. And there's some cities that do it differently that we didn't have in our formula.
Yeah.
So you kind of sent that. So where are we now on that topic? Is that a topic you're going to have done before your days in the council are over, you think?
I hope so. This is probably one of my top 2 or 3 priorities of things I want to finish. And we can talk more about that later. But before I go on, let me just say, so there are 2 very different issues, and public's going to have ample opportunity to weigh in on both. So on the one hand, we have the rent cap or rent stabilization or rent control. We're talking about government regulation on how much you can increase the rent year to year. As you guys know, because you're helping us get the word out, that is not what we're talking about here. That topic is going to be the subject of a survey and several public forums that we're gathering input from the community over the next few months. So if you're listening to this and you have an opinion one way or the other on the appropriate level of government involvement, you can participate and get your feedback to council that way. But this topic is the important related issue of what you do in a situation where a tenant is being evicted. Look, and we're not talking necessarily about the at-fault causes. I mean, if you don't pay your rent or you trash, that's one thing.
But we've all talked in the past. Ross has gone through this.
Right. Now we're talking about no-fault eviction, right? So I need to do a substantial renovation of my building. I have to evict you. Or I need to move an elderly or sick relative in. I need that room back. So we're talking about those situations. So the way the ordinance is written currently, what is currently on the books in Burbank, is that only for the category of I have a substantial remodel that I have to do on the property, only for that reason for eviction, you are entitled as a tenant to 3 months worth of relocation assistance. For all the other reasons that you are lawfully allowed to evict a tenant under law, under state law, it currently only requires 1 month of rental assistance, relocation assistance. What the council talked about last week was, look, this is at least Nick Schultz's sort of cliff notes and summary. I think what we reached consensus on is that regardless of the reason for a no-fault eviction, 1 month's rent just isn't enough when you're looking at moving expenses, when you're looking at a deposit on a new place. And I think that for the sake of consistency and treating everyone as fairly as we can, we're looking at 3 months relocation assistance for all the categories of eviction. So that change to the ordinance is going to be coming back at a future council meeting, and I believe that component will be done certainly while I'm on council. The council also wanted to look at a few other related issues, so there's still the ongoing conversation of whether certain mom and pop landlords should be exempted from that requirement of more relocation assistance. Council really hasn't reached a consensus on how do you define a mom and pop. Is it based on the number of units that they own and operate? Is it based on a sole proprietor as opposed to some LLC or corporation? These are the questions that we have to grapple with. And the last thing I would say is that we also talked a little bit about tenants who are in more dire or more limited circumstances. So maybe a tenant that's dealing with like a terminal illness. Some communities have said even above and beyond the 3 months of relocation, maybe there's additional compensation that they're entitled to. That is the issues I'm outlining now. Council has not reached a consensus on, but these are the things that we'll probably be exploring and discussing and hopefully reaching a consensus on before the end of the year.
Very complicated issue.
Extremely.
And I don't think there's a good guy side and a bad guy side on this. I think that the landlords have legitimate concerns and the tenants have legit. It's be a tough way to go. You know, I mean,
I've been in that situation. You know, I've been evicted. So was a guy that lived above me that lived there for 29 years, and we got both evicted. And thank goodness, now that I think about because we agreed, I lost my security deposit and everything else, and I guess that's why it wasn't put on my record. Now that I think about it, but currently, I'm in a situation, this rent cap, $300 last year. I just got a note as of August 1st.
You're talking about the state rent cap, right?
Yeah.
Which is
10%, or just below 9.8.
Yeah, 9 point, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Every year they can raise it that much.
Well, they have the last 2 years. I mean.
Yeah. It's always a maximum of 10%, but still, I mean, 9-8%, what I would say is that's certainly outpacing my year-to-year job, my wage increase, right?
Sure.
Like I'm not getting 8 to 9% increases a year. Most people are not.
Yeah, and it just, when is it going to stop? I understand we're in California, but folks, it hurts. You think of all the other things, and like you said, when people don't realize when you go to move, it's not just moving; it's redoing your cable, redoing all those things. Reconnecting gas, going to the city, so forth.
Changing all your credit card, all your addresses, everything, the mail, the whole,
it's quite involved.
Well, and Ross, to your point, what I would say is, look, I think you both said something really important. This is not an us versus them. There is no bad guy in the equation. I don't think anyone on the council, and I am certainly not pointing my finger at landlords, housing providers, if you will, in our community saying that you're the problem. That's not the case. The issue is we're talking about a situation where a tenant's getting evicted, and it's not because they didn't pay the rent. The tenant did nothing wrong. They just, the property needs to be reclaimed by the housing provider. And so the way I look at it is this is all about fairness and ensuring that folks land on their feet and are able to find good replacement housing. And so, look, without naming the organization, there was one organization that recently reached out to me and advocated for me to simply not touch the issue and leave it for the election and the next council to decide. The same organization is now sending postcards throughout Burbank. I know you guys are getting word on that. And I will tell the public and those listening right now the same thing that I told to this representative with this organization. With all due respect, we have a housing crisis right now. We have tenants who are at risk of displacement right now. And I'm going to do the job I was elected to do until I'm no longer on the council. And I'm going to try to strike that right balance. And I think my colleagues are on board too. And this is not a time for politics and gamesmanship.
That's not who you are. You are the person who will take responsibility.
Exactly.
I've come after the 4 years we've come to know you. You have a lot of integrity when it comes to that stuff.
I appreciate it.
Well, that leads me into my next, a question that we did put down, or no, I guess in my notes was, we had talked about the property up, what's considered the old IKEA. Burbank needs to put in more rental, more whatever, residential. And
how many houses are we down for the state?
Oh, man.
3,700 or?
We are required to build 8,800 units of housing by the end of the RENA cycle. So
which is
like 2028.
Okay,
So we need to build almost 9,000 units of new housing. So we have a lot of work to do.
So
carpenters needed.
Well, that leads me to that question. That old IKEA site, I know there's a lot of, it's gone back and forth. We saw a development that was going to go in there, then it got pulled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is there maybe some future down the road? Do we see maybe looking, Bob Frutos always said, well, we don't have a crystal ball, but do you see in your crystal ball when you shake it up, maybe that being developed in the next several years?
I think so, and I'm rooting for it. Not a month goes by where I'm not asking Patrick Prescott, what can we do to get someone in there to build housing? So in my view, there are 3 sites in town that just make too much sense. Like why don't we have housing there? That would be the old IKEA, the old Kmart, and the mall itself. I mean, we have a great mall, but it is underutilized. I mean, look, the malls of the 1990s that I grew up going to, that is just not where people do
The
their
Burbank
shopping
Mall
these
has
days.
never been that popular because the Galleria pretty much set the
it's hard to
tone.
do.
And they originally planned where Office Depot is, an office building.
Mm-hmm.
And during the day, that's what people walk to the mall and buy their lunch and do their Christmas shopping and all that. We never built that office building where the bakery,
Corner Bakery.
Corner Bakery, same thing, was supposed to be another office building.
And the old Home Savings is Chase Bank.
Right.
now,
All
yeah.
those were supposed to be developed with the vision, that'll keep the mall going, but that never happened. Now, I will say, and I'm wondering what the plans will be with that new development on First Street, the apartments,
Mm-hmm.
First Street Village.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of people living there. And if unless they change that entrance, which I had heard that was the plan,
Mm-hmm.
or down the road, so people from that development can get into the mall.
and
easier.
a 777 Front Street building too. That's going to
Right. That's
create a lot of people in the
definitely.
area too.
I mean,
Definitely.
I'll tell you both right now. If I had an endless pile of cash and a magic wand, when I look at the IKEA and the Kmart, for example, I see a great possibility for apartments, but something even. How about condominiums or townhomes? Some home ownership opportunity where people could buy into Burbank and have a nest egg and really invest in the community. For the mall, I'm not saying we should go as high end as the Americanet brand, but the concept of like an outdoor walkable space mall with housing above it, where people can live and walk down and go shopping and get their groceries, like
I love that concept for the mall. And the Ani Group, which recently acquired the mall property, I haven't seen any plans yet, but from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, they are looking at schematics that could potentially add 1,000 units of new housing on that parcel alone. That is not only going to solve our housing crisis, but we always talk on the show about how you grow and yet, complement and integrate with the community, not upend things. Well, those are just vacant and underutilized commercial parcels sitting there. That's where we add the housing, and makes sense to do it.
I heard through just around town, I have no facts to back this up, which I hate even to talk about it, but I did hear it. It's not a bad thing, but they're building that one 7-story apartment house on Empire. I was told the other 2 buildings that got basically approved under SB 35 are now not being built, and the state came down and said, "We're changing how you can do that," and the developers bailed out on it. Is that true? I mean, I don't know if you know about that or not. I mean, that's kind of an out there, but I heard that we've lost those 2 buildings.
We did. So the developer of the 140 plus unit project on Empire, and you all remember this is the one that had a little controversy because
7 parking places?
Right. State law only required the 7 parking places. So that one did get approved, and I believe it's still happening. The developer was going to develop those other 2 parcels. It never got to the point of approval before council, but just from what I know about the parcel, it would have been the same situation, an SB 35 project where they would have qualified. Those projects did fall through, and I believe that the owner is still looking to find a way to develop them for housing.
I got to tell you, that developer, not one of my favorite people. Kind of came in here and big leagued Burbank, and just kind of threw his nose up in the air at the council, and I did not appreciate that attitude.
I think, and that's where the state.
And I can say that because I'm a citizen. You really can't say that, but I did not appreciate his tone or his attitude.
Well, I think some of these developers come in here. A good example is Pickwick.
Mm-hmm.
What you got, the residents down there, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't do that. Then SB 35 kicks in, and he goes, I can do what I want to now. And now, and I remember him going to council, he changed his attitude a bit when he, after it all got approved, and so forth. But Burbank's changing, and people don't like that. Let's say we go back to the old IKEA site.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand. There's a market a half a block away. You don't need 2 cars when you don't have to, commute.
I agree.
You have Metrolink. I just heard yesterday that Metrolink buses and trains, the ridership has increased over when it slowed down for COVID.
Pre-pandemic levels, it increased.
Wow.
And they're saying, and then that picture that we got to look down again, that crystal ball. We got the Olympics in 28. I mean, people are going to come into Burbank.
And the World Cup in 2 years.
World Cup. I mean, there's some events, we're going to have a new airport, rebuilt airport. But Craig, yesterday on our weekly show, we kind of joked, it's now a race. The new Warner Ranch or ranch stages.
The ranch lot.
And the airport, which is going to be done first.
Yeah.
They're both in.
The lot's going up pretty quick.
Yeah, very quick.
They really are. I mean, I don't know if you saw this week. I happened to watch, it came on the progress of the terminal.
Mm-hmm.
They're pouring concrete, and they got concrete going up, and the guy said, we're ahead of schedule. I guess he said right now the biggest problem is they're ahead of schedule. It's the heat that they're dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
So that leads me into my next question.
Okay.
It's not a hot one, but it's going to be over 100 degrees here in Burbank
Before
this
we
week.
start that, can I finish with one more question on housing?
Oh, housing.
And then we'll get.
Okay.
You have a very good question coming up. We have the media district specific plan, which is the big thing going on right now. And in that plan, it talks about the size of development, the height limits, things like that.
Yeah.
And of course, before that's been approved, we've got the developer came in on Pass and Riverside and wants to build a very large building, a very tall building.
Okay.
And residents are not happy in this area.
Yeah, I'm hearing about it.
How the developer has every right to do what he's doing. He's not doing anything illegal. How do you tell these residents that, we can't stop him from doing this, A, and B is, how do we start putting safeguards in around the city?
Yeah.
So if a developer says, hey, they're going to start doing, let's go in real fast and do something before they make a rule, how can we do something to temper the, like any area under consideration cannot have a development until it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know how you would phrase that, but I see the neighbors are very upset.
Yeah.
But let's face it, they all can come to city council and yell and scream, but the developer's not doing anything legally wrong. And you can't say, you can't do that because legally we'd be on the hook then for a lawsuit.
Well, the Empire Project.
Yeah.
He kind of came in here and said,
Right.
This is what I'm doing. You don't like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these neighbors down here are all, they're all.
I know. Craig, they have Craig's address
Yes.
for this project down the street here. And
I get regular literature.
You talking to Mary?
Had lunch with her last week.
Oh, she's really sweet.
She really is.
So
she's trying, and we understand her point. People don't like change. She's a stickler for change. I get it. They have made some adjustments on that project, listening to the residents.
But the height is still above what the new
Yeah.
plan says it should be and things. So what do you tell these people when that comes to you? Because that's where you're in a tough spot.
Well, right now I'm telling folks that are talking about this particular project, advocate, come to council, talk. My understanding, this project will come back early next year. So as much as I'm up to speed on it, I unfortunately won't get a chance to weigh in on it officially. But what I would say, though, is, look, I get the frustration. Here's what I would say. There are two things that we can do to, yes, meet our demand for more housing, but do it in a really sensible way. And there's a local solution I'll start with, and then there's really a change I think we need to do at the state level. So at the local level, it all comes down to these specific area plans, because that is where you can bake in objective development standards, height limitations, setback requirements. That's where we are having to use Bob's phrase, have a little bit of a crystal ball, but you are applying objective criteria that apply to any kind of development on any parcel. And that's really where we still have some ability to protect the community from overdevelopment and some of the impacts of these projects. Those are also all three going to come back early next year. So regrettably, one of the things I'm not going to get to touch.
Well, you can't touch them on the state level.
Yeah, and I still may, you might see me showing up at a council meeting saying, hey, here's how I would have voted.
Well, it's funny because Emily Gabaletti did speak at last night's planning board meeting, and she doesn't come out too much.
She makes some good. She actually came to the media district. She's still involved besides being an airport commissioner, which I think is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think people realize when we talked about the what's the development along Hollywood Way where FedEx is, or where Randy's Donuts is.
The Avalon project or the Fry's project? Which one?
No, the old one where the new warehouses are along Hollywood Way. That took years to develop.
The Avion project.
Avion. Yeah. And I remember it was a fight, about Hollywood Way being a major street. People down at Pass or at Hollywood Way in Alameda were concerned.
Yeah.
What the traffic was going to do. They've been in there a couple of years.
Life goes on.
I always want to sing that song, The Sun Will Come Up Tomorrow.
It will.
Well,
it will.
Talking about the sun, Ross, you've got a question about what the sun's been doing.
Wait, my turn before you got to it.
Okay.
Here's the only tweak I'd say. At the state level, so let me put it this way. We treat two parcels of property almost identical in California. So if you want to subdivide and put an ADU at your neighbor's house over here, Craig, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's as if we're treating it the same as any other parcel in town. My thought is this. We all know where the housing really needs to go. It's on those sites we talked about, the IKEA site, the old Kmart site. That's where you're going to add more housing at the level of density that we actually need to solve our housing crisis. So right now, the state is treating every parcel the same. We need to think two-dimensionally. Well, we really need to think three-dimensionally. Right. If that's where we want the housing to go, then don't offer the same incentive as the property to you next door. If that's where the housing needs to go, let's talk about relief from development impact fees. Let's talk about other ways to steer the development of housing to the places in our community that make the most sense. And the last thing I'll say, because I do want to get to your question, Ross, is to me that seems very common sense. And I think the reason it hasn't been done is how many legislators have been on a planning commission or on a council. But when you've been in a community and you've seen this tug of war of needing to grow, but also trying to respect the concerns of existing residents, when you don't have that nuance and that perspective, that's how you get sort of cookie cutter approach in state law, in my opinion.
Well, I will say, with you running for assembly, we can say that, even though it's a mayor's show, the assembly district for this area, you've gotten your feet wet in Burbank. You know how the politics is in Burbank, but you got now other cities that are how to deal with it. So you get to look forward.
I'll just say this. I look forward to coming back on the show as a candidate. But as a mayor, and speaking just in that lens, I can tell you that the mayor of Glendale, the mayor of Pasadena, the mayor of LA, we are all dealing with the same issue and how we navigate our relationship with the state. And, hopefully we will have more and more leaders at the state level with local government experience so that they understand that perspective. And I look forward to talking more about that when I'm back.
Ross, let's talk about the heat.
Okay,
the heat is on.
That brings up a hot one. It's
Hot topic here.
It's been pretty warm the last week or so, and they're saying we're going to have another week of over 100-degree weather.
Yep.
In the past, LA County used to open up cooling centers, which they still do, and so does the city of Los Angeles, and they're pushing them. Why hasn't Burbank opened up? And I know
we
depended on LA County,
because
I was told they pay for the employees.
They do.
They pay all of that. I mean, it's as hot here as it is in the other districts. Why aren't we opening a library as a cooling center? Or I know there's other areas you can walk the mall or sit in the mall and it's 70 degrees in there.
Oh yeah.
But at the library, and I'm just curious why this round we didn't see anything.
Yeah, I can tell you that when the hot weather started, I actually called our city manager, Justin Hess, and I actually asked him that question because I was concerned, why don't we open it up? I don't have all the answers as I sit here tonight, but my understanding is that, as you said, the county is the one who ultimately makes the call to say, hey, Burbank, you're going to go ahead and open up cooling shelters. We're going to provide the funding and other support relief. But, it's really a county level decision. I would, this is just pure speculation, I would speculate that it's a matter of resource management. But what I can say is it's something that I have spoken about with the city manager. And as the hot weather continues this week, I'll be on the phone to Catherine Barger, her office. We'll be talking and, continuing to push for having the resources to keep that library open. Because you're right, when the weather gets hot, for many, many people, it can be a life-threatening situation if they don't have somewhere cool to go.
Well, what I find is July, our utilities went up a bit. Some of these, we have an older community, and people don't realize they all don't have air conditioning, and they'll leave off their air conditioning during the day so they can, pay their bill. But those are the people that sometimes you need help. You don't think of the 25 or 30-year-old that works a pretty good job, but it's now getting to be a challenge. And I know Catherine is very supportive of things
Very
that we've
much so.
asked. I mean, every time I'm out and about, she's helping Burbank. I mean, she really does keep us
Absolutely.
as in her district. What else?
Well, I think we've
Oh, this is the good time. We give him open mic time.
yes, I think we've gotten kind of everything that we've kind of had questions for, but I think we should talk a little about the upcoming elections here in Burbank and the process if somebody wants to run for council. And I have a thing that most people do not know, that now you have to run in a district for school board.
Yeah.
And 2/5 of the city will not get to vote for a school board member this cycle.
Yeah.
I think there'd be a lot of a surprise when they figure that stuff out. But as far as running for city council, how do they do it? What's the process? Give us a little rundown. You've been through it.
I have been. So council has 2 seats up. Worst kept secret in town by operation of law, because I'm in another race. I will not be running for the city council. So that
pretty much why we can't have the governor be the vice president. Once again, by law.
That's the law is very.
The law is very, very strict.
That is true. So here's what that means if you're listening to this and you're thinking about running. So first things up, the two seats that'll be up both carry 4-year terms. So you'd be elected in November. You will be 2 people from the community will be seated in December, and then their terms will run all the way through December 18th of 2028. So there's 2 4-year terms that are up. When you go online, you see there's different dates for the nomination period. Let me make it easy for all your listeners. So because I'm not going to be running for re-election, you have until Wednesday, August 14th at 5 p.m. to get your nomination paperwork in. So there is still time for people that are listeners of your podcast. If they really want to run for council, it is not too late. You can go down to the office, you can grab the paperwork, you can get the signatures from your neighbors, and you can file to run.
I was going to say, I just want to interject. Our city clerk, Kimberly Clark, and Pryor Zizette, their webpage, if you want to know the ins and outs and what you have to do, they will walk you by your hand on how to get through the process.
And Kim is very, very receptive to helping people.
So if you want to run, there are some requirements, like the mayor just said. You have to get so many signatures to endorse you.
Yep. You have to be a resident of the city for at least 31 days. There are registration and filing fees, and there are hardship waivers, if folks really can't afford to pay those. The thing I would just say is if you want to learn more, if you're interested, you can go down to Kimberly's office at City Hall. You can visit the website. We actually have this portion of the website in English, Spanish, and Armenian translation.
Wow.
And you can always call the number 818-238-5851. It's open every business day during general hours. You can call and ask questions to your heart's delight if this is something that you think is right for you.
Well, I'm throwing Craig here. Did you know he ran for city council back many years ago?
I didn't know that.
1978.
He did
when dirt was first thought of.
He was not the lowest.
That didn't come in last.
He didn't come in last.
All right.
But we're talking. That's why.
You remember the number one thing on my platform was?
At that time, was it?
We had no movie theaters in Burbank.
Movie capital of the world.
We are the movie capital of the world, and we had no theaters in Burbank.
Now we have like 2 AMCs next to each other.
Right, the Pickwick had just shut down, and that was it. And I said, "This is ridiculous." How, and at that time I was, I wasn't that old, and people my age had nowhere to go in Burbank in the evenings, no movies, no anything, and so
that's where he's gotten it. The force has been with him all these years, and a lot of people don't also realize when you go in front of Bob's, let's say. The people that have been here many years, there used to be 20 news racks. Mm-hmm. Half of them were pornographic news sites. Yeah. Craig looked up the city codes, and he forced the city to have them all removed.
355 newspaper stands in front of any painted curb in the city.
And that was his doing of having them.
And look at how nice it looks now when you drive Bob's Big Boy. It looks nice.
Well, and I think it's a good reminder that, look, if you care about your community, run for office. You don't have to run for office to be effective and to do a lot of, but, hey, we need good people to run.
Sure.
It's funny you say that because Craig and I were just talking. Bob Kramer, who started as a council critic, and was at council every week, didn't like the smell going over the Burbank Bridge. My granddaughters call it the poop bridge, but they don't understand the purpose of the reclamation center and the millions of dollars that, so forth. And then Bob became a council member and then a mayor.
Yeah.
And then
now he's Mr. Burbank.
And just before he left, they created the office of ombudsman.
Yep.
And I think he left the council a month or 2 months early to take that position, and he's been there ever since.
But again, there is a perfect showing.
But he loved Burbank.
Of how you get involved in Burbank. You're passionate about something.
Absolutely.
You want to see, get on a commission. I will commend you guys. I read through all those applications.
Yeah.
You guys had a lot of reading. I know why you guys walk away with 3 notebooks, 3-inch notebooks every week. We had some great people apply.
Tons.
They really were qualified. As I said to Craig, the ones that lived here maybe 2-3 years, you're not in Burbank long enough to know when the light signals change on Magnolia. You got to have a little more time here. But you guys did your homework. I was very happy with who you placed. And there are other things that people can do to get involved.
Oh, yeah.
Currently, we just got a notice today.
It's got to be tough, though, when they come up to communications and they plead their case for the 2 minutes. And they're sitting in, and they're hoping that did it, and then you don't pick them. It's it's got to, it's got to break your heart, because it's not personal.
No, and I'll tell you, of all the decisions we make, the land use, the ceasefire statement, the toughest decision is always looking at someone who is qualified and wants to get involved
and volunteer. And
yet you have 10 people, all great, applying for 2 spots. Yeah. That is the worst decision.
Well, there are currently 4. Even now, you guys voted. It was the term. It normally runs July. Mm-hmm. I noticed we got a notice today from the city clerk. There's an opening on the Park and Rec Board.
Yep.
And we have an opening on our planning board. So if you have, now when I say planning board, it's nice if you know what a hammer is, or you can look at plans and read the legend, and the smart things. But also the Parks and Rec.
Well, Parks and Rec, I'll tell you, I really have thought about running, applying for that. But, I look at the applications people put in, and they have,
12 pages of
college
resume.
degrees and everything else. I go, God, I guess it doesn't matter. I have 50 years in, sports, and I've used all these parks my entire life. I think they're probably looking for,
I will say,
for education and not for experience.
Couple of those resumes, when you see NASA engineer, you go, and they're applying for this board. Okay.
It's intimidating.
Well, again, if you have anyone who's listening and is thinking of either the Planning Commission or the Parks and Rec Board, I hope this insight is helpful. Can't speak for any of my colleagues, but I obviously look for a qualified candidate, but I don't always go with the person whose resume looks the best on paper. Because, Craig, you'd appreciate this as a coach, right? I'm thinking about it from the team dynamic. Okay, it's like a council. Would you want a council full of 5 Nicks? Probably not. So you want balance. And I'm always looking at, okay, what are the strengths of the Planning Commission? And then where do they not really have expertise? Who could we add into the fold that maybe has an experience, professional, lived, or otherwise, that no other commissioner has? So
don't be surprised. Maybe if you, although it might mean I have to put on pants.
I'm pretty sure that might be an expectation, but you should do it.
But honestly, like you say, you look at those applications, and like you say, I read. It had to be 2 days. Mm-hmm. I read through every one, and a lot of that, people don't realize it's public information, and you learn about somebody quite a bit. And then when you put somebody on those boards and commissions, you want them to be a team player.
Oh, yeah.
Being on a board or commission or any of the boards in Burbank, you got to work with other people.
You do.
One of the nice things about, they do teach that in Leadership Burbank, they give them a project, and it's not one person's project, it's a class project, and you all have to put in your 110%.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the people get out of Leadership Burbank. But I will say, we've seen council, they don't talk to one another.
Oh, I know.
And
this is not that council.
No.
Well, and I will say, and I know you guys probably got other questions or things to get to, but I will say, whether you're running for council this year or you're applying for a board and commission, my one bit of unsolicited advice is, it's easy to stand up as a candidate or applicant and say, I want to do this, I want to change this, but it's a team sport, right? At the end of the day, you can't make anything happen without at least 2 other votes in the case of council, or more if you're on certain boards and commissions. So it's great to have ideas, but you have to understand walking in that you need to work with other people. You need to play well in the sandbox, and you have to work to get things done. That's democracy.
I'll tell you, one of my motivations for thinking about this is the huge development they're going to do at Olive, or we don't call it Olive Park anymore. It's now George Isaiah Park. Mm-hmm. And I really believe I would have good input to that because of being experienced in the city.
You should
and understanding. Well, I'm thinking about it, but those are the reasons that I think I would have good ideas. And you're right. You like Ross says, you have to work with people, but I would be doing it to benefit my city. That'd be my only motivation.
And people need to understand, you do not get to make choice of what city employee gets a pat on the back. They don't work for you.
Right.
Right.
They work for our city manager. You need to know how our city government works.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Los Angeles. It's not like the state of California. We are run by a city manager who's in charge of the personnel of the city,
Mm-hmm.
and the city attorney works for the city council. Those are the only two jobs that answer to the city council. And I know some council members have gotten up there, and I've been out with them and go, well, I can take care of that. As you've learned, you really can't. You can hand off the problem to that department, but there's no more weight that it came from the mayor or whatever.
But they do want to make you happy.
Yeah, well, what's your purpose?
Yeah, well, and I think, boy, that could be a whole nother segment or a show, but it's the concept of hard power and soft power, right? Like,
Yes.
as a council member in Burbank, as the mayor, it's not like City of LA. I'm not Karen Bass. I'm not the de facto Justin Hess of the city. I'm not running, by extension, all the departments. But I think that if you understand your role as a spokesman for the community, if you're able to motivate people, if you're able to guide them with vision and prompt them to do things that you think will do good, like there is a way to get your agenda done, but you're always going to get more accomplished if you are positive, if you're motivational, if you're aspirational in your approach, and not coming in dictating, saying, I want to do X, Y, and Z, because at the end of the day, you'll turn off staff, you'll turn off your colleagues, and you won't get the agenda done that you really want to achieve.
And we've said this numerous times. We're real fortunate in this city to have a guy by the name of Justin Huss running it.
Yeah, we are. Yep.
He's a long-term person. He didn't, he cares about this city.
He understands it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the last couple of council meetings, it's been tough for him when you guys bring up some of these topics, and, he has to deal with them, him and the city attorney. But if you, Craig and I always say, it's nice when you go and turn the light switch on and the lights go on. Christmas Day, your trash is going to get picked up in the city of Burbank.
Yep.
You don't get that in Beverly Hills. You don't get that in other cities. The things that we get here,
Yeah.
and they're all led by a great team of city employees, 1,800 some odd city employees
Mm-hmm.
that don't just come for a paycheck. They care about the city.
Well, and I will say one other thing. If I do it at council all the time, but if I can break the fourth wall, I mean, look, there are folks running for my seat, right, that are probably listening to your podcast. Here would be my advice. I'll say it now because then everyone gets to hear it, right? No one gets any special treatment. Sometimes I agree with Joe McDougall. Sometimes I don't. Same with Justin Hess. But I will tell you, rarely is anything ever said on the dais from me that I haven't discussed with them in advance, because at the end of the day, we can disagree. And I understand my role and I understand their role, but we are part of a team. We hash it out on the dais, and whatever the majority of council wants to do, Justin and Joe and the rest of staff, they're professionals. They will execute the mission of council. Our job, though, is, try to set each other up for success. Like, if I have a tough question, I'll tell the department head, hey, I'm going to grill you on this. Want you to be ready. I want you to have an answer for me. I think that's good governance. It's not about showmanship.
I think there's respect.
Exactly.
There is respect, always.
Well, you just said it. Craig and I have listened to, honestly, over hundreds of city staffers.
Mm-hmm.
And the last couple of years, we've had some of the top-notch city employees. When you ask a question, they put their A team up there to answer your questions. It's not, one or two need to go, well, I need to go find that out.
Sure.
But it amazes me that when you ask, or when somebody gives a report, they're well prepared.
And I think the key to that success, both for people that might be on the council soon and just those who watch it and like to learn more, is if your interest is in having a headline and looking like you're really smart and making a spectacle, then you can just wait till the meeting and ask your questions. But if you care about getting good policy done, you should tell your staff in advance, I want to know the answer to this. I want you to have the answer when I ask it. And I'm going to ask it so the community can come along and understand my thought process. And I think that this council especially, as a team, we do a pretty good job of doing that. That's why we've had really, yes, they go to 3 a.m., but we've had really thoughtful, good dialogue.
I still think you should have 3 meetings a month on, it's just a big subject. Have it a special, like you did for the Colony Theater. Have a special meeting.
It's funny. I said to Craig the other night when the meeting went to 251.
251.
I figured, why?
And we were up. We watched the whole thing.
You know why it went to 251? Because in the parking structure, there's no parking between 3 and 5.
We got out.
So,
well,
what a show!
We've come to. We've come to though. We're not done yet.
No,
because we forgot. Not forgot, but we're saving it for last.
Wait, isn't there a drum roll for this part?
We do have a drum roll for that, of course. Yes, we do. There we go. And it's time for What's on the Mayor's Mind?
Well, thank you guys. I'll be quick. What's on the mayor's mind tonight is there's actually 3 community events coming up that I'm really excited about. I would imagine that my Burbank will be at some, if not all of these, but I want everyone to know about it so I can see them out there. So the first one up is and forgive me, I'm just going to look at my notes here because there's so much good stuff. We have the inaugural City of Burbank Media Industry Expo and Job Fair. Yes. It's going to be at Woodbury University Thursday, August 1st from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. This is really exciting. I hope that, look, if you want to break into the entertainment industry, this is the place to go and learn more and network. It's going to be exciting. Next up, we have National Night Out, which is always a huge thing in Burbank. We do it better than anybody. So that's Tuesday, August 6th in lieu of our normal council meeting.
It starts at Johnny Carson Park.
Yep, 5:30 to 8:30.
And then many neighborhoods will have their own celebrations also, which I know you and the council all visit.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. We all go to Johnny Carson Park to kick it off, but then, generally speaking, we all ride along with other BPD officers and visit the block parties, and so it's a really great event. And the last thing is, and this one I'm really excited about because I now live like 2 minutes from it, go figure, August 14th, 6 p.m., the 20th anniversary of the Chandler Bike Path. We have a really special celebration that the city of Burbank is hosting with the BTMO and Walk Bike Burbank. Ross, I know you could probably speak more to this. This is exciting. It's 20 years.
We remember when it was a train track. I once covered a train accident at Pass and
Chandler.
Pass and Chandler when a train ran into a car at Pass and Chandler. So that's how much we remember the old days. But boy,
well, I will tell you,
what a great thing the city's done for that, to make that.
Craig Hemphill and Mike and the Walk Bike Burbank teams started many months ago.
Yep.
And you can go on the Chandler Bike Path and you will find all walks of life. People skating, people walking, old folks in their walker. I remember when it was put in. Marsha Ramos was one of the people. Janet Deal was involved back in the day. Probably one of the best things that got put into the city, and even the people that live on Chandler, when the train tracks were there were hibiscus plants. You didn't even know your neighbor across the street because you couldn't see them. We have found Walk Bike Burbank, a former city employee's husband was an engineer on that train every day. Lives on California right up the block. He's been a great resource. He saw the tracks come out, the Chandler Bike Path get put in. That they're working on some stories from him. Like I say, Walk Bike Burbank is doing some great history. And again, this is a community event. It's free. There will be giveaways. There will be enjoyment. And for people that haven't, we moved it. It was going to be a Californian Chandler, but with the aid of having the Whitnell Park at Pass and Chandler, we're thinking it might grow pretty big. We can go into that park some. Oh, yeah. So another great event, like you say.
I think this is totally off the topic, but on this topic, I think down the line, you as a council are going to have some decisions to make because I've seen like in the beach towns, kids are getting electric bikes now. They're going 15, 20 miles an hour. Kids, not just adults.
Yep.
And the more of these electric bikes and scooters and everything else, the Chandler Bike Path is, it's kind of, there's people walking. There's a lot of, I'm just wondering what, down the line, what is going to happen, new laws or new BMC
Currently,
codes
Burbank doesn't have any laws about riding those scooters or bicycles
Right.
on the sidewalk.
Yeah, you can ride on a sidewalk.
It's
which
something
is
that
crazy.
will have to be a municipal code, enacted as a municipal code.
That's right.
And nowadays, like you say, last night I was right down the street from the studio, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and this guy goes buzzing by me, and it's like, oh, whoa.
Yeah, but it's the kids that have them now.
But I've been on Magnolia, and somebody come up on you on a bike, and it's too late when you turn around. So we're changing how we do our transportation.
Yep.
A lot more people walking and so forth. So maybe down the road, that would be a law that we would see that, but again, as the Burbank police would say, they don't like to, they do like to enforce. It's the 3 E's,
Yep.
But it's engineering and education. You got to educate people that what you can do and can't do.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, related but different topic, one of the big items on, I believe, next Tuesday's council meeting agenda is an update, nothing final, but an update on the Safer Streets Burbank initiative, which is really taking the concept of Vision Zero, the goal of redesigning streets to achieve zero pedestrian and other traffic fatalities. And so staff's going to be coming back because it's been almost 18 months since we initially brought it up. They're going to be sharing with us and the community what they've been working on, how they envision achieving that goal. And so it's a great intersection of talking about how we handle motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists. Certainly not the full conversation, but if people have thoughts on it, it's a great opportunity next Tuesday to share your perspective with council.
Well, can I give a little tease?
Absolutely.
We have asked the czar, what we call the czar of Burbank Transportation czar,
Mr. Krisky, I assume.
David Krisky.
Yeah.
He has agreed, and Craig talked to him just the other day. He's going to sit down and do a podcast with us.
I love that.
And
One of the shows with you, Aaron.
And where's he going to do that podcast with us at?
We're going to do that on a Burbank bus as we are driving around Burbank.
Because I
love that.
remember 4 or 5 months ago, somebody sat up at that council meeting in the mayor's chair and said, we're going to do a podcast on a bus. And I go, oh, are we really? Well, you know what? Ross
We
and I
are.
have figured it out. We think we've got the equipment we need to do this.
I love it.
Jonathan at the PIO's office has been fantastic to us and helped get us arranged. The Burbank bus people are helping with it.
Oh,
so
Karen from transportation.
Yeah.
She has gotten us routes. She's gotten us how,
Oh, it's so
so it's
get ready for that coming up. And
I'm excited. Let's do it.
I think we'll do the whole mayor's show just on transportation in Burbank.
There's more than enough to talk about, right?
Yeah.
well, David Krisky, we ran into him. He was on the day of the Road King's car show. He was out. He's a car fanatic. He's a transportation guru. And his wife and there's
That's right. I didn't recognize him with that hat on right away either.
but I knew who he was, and he knows, and he shared with us, what people are seeing. Burbank, you don't just snap your finger and decide to do something. It takes a lot of planning.
It does.
This safe streets, we got to reduce the people getting killed. I'm shooting. We have how many accidents
So many.
where people are getting killed, and it's a lot of things are going on. But he said, he has some to share with us around town here, some things that are going to go on
Mm-hmm.
that I think it'll be very interesting, and I'm looking forward to. David, I've known since he,
I'm going to be critical on the Burbank bus system in general.
Yeah.
So I think that I think we could do so much better.
I agree. And
I really do.
And it'd be great to have a north to south running
Yes.
line through our community.
And even up on the hill, we're going by the schools where the kids can, because I think it's a great. You guys are talking about waiving the fee for students.
Yeah.
But if you're a student in a school, there's no Burbank bus running near you to jump onto.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's things are changing, but in a positive way. But change does, like Ross says, change takes time.
It does. Well, I'm looking forward to that next show, or whenever we get to it, whether it's next month or the month
Oh, it's
after.
gonna be next month. We're
All right,
we're
I'm
gearing
ready.
up for it. It's gonna happen. We make sure we get an air conditioned bus.
Yes.
they're all air conditioned.
Okay,
for sure.
that's gonna be the.
Well, I noticed on our show notes, Mayor, this is the time, the last 4 months of you being on council.
Yeah.
What are there things that you want to accomplish that you can share? Because we're not at a council meeting.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that the priorities for me really do echo what the council goals were when we set them a few months back. In terms of housing, look, I don't know that we're going to solve the housing crisis in 4 months, but trying to get to a good place in terms of the eviction protections we've been talking about. Look, the rent stabilization piece, that may take longer, but I think with the eviction protections, I'd love to get that wrapped up in the next 4 months, reach a consensus so the community knows what to expect.
Ross brought up a thing in the show the other day, which we're worried. I think we were talking privately. He says, well, I really hope when the new council, if that's not finished, that when the new council gets seated, the new 2 members, that we don't start over again from, we got to bring them up to speed a little bit, but we don't, all of a sudden now the 3-month period now takes another 9 months because these 2 members want to do the whole process again.
But I think that brings up a good point. Sorry to interrupt both of you. No. When you look at your people running for city council, some of them probably know some of the stuff going on, and some of them are quite well involved in our Burbank community. And when you vote, you want somebody that knows what's going on in this community and kind of has a background, knows, so we don't have to start all over again. It's right, like when you go from 7th grade to 8th grade or go from middle school to high school, it's like, wow. But I think whoever we fill those 2 seats with, streamline that process of them knowing,
right. Just keep moving.
Not a learning process for them.
Yeah, I agree. And that's really where my passion for trying to get as much progress made in 4 months on this issue comes from. It's not coming from the point of trying to ram my agenda through. It's coming from the perspective of, I've sat with this for 4 years. I have a lot of knowledge and perspective that I have accumulated from hearing our residents. I'd like to offer as much of that to the community as I can and do as much good while I'm still on the council. Quickly, I would say, so housing, that's one issue. Transportation, we're going to talk a lot more about that next month. There are I would love to revisit the Green Line for Burbank Bus before I go. And then sustainability, there's always more that we can do to really reduce our carbon footprint to build a more climate resilient community. We're going to be talking about gas leaf blowers in a few months. We're also going to be talking about workforce development standards. All of these are things that I really want to tackle. And the last thing I will say is this. I want to get as much good stuff done as we can in 4 months, of course. But I also understand that, look, I will hopefully, I'm not leaving Burbank no matter what, and hopefully I'll be continuing to serve the community in some capacity, even after 4 months. So let's carry the ball, let's carry the baton, if you will, and put us in the best position so that when we hand it off to the next runner, they can keep Burbank moving forward. And I think we have a lot of great work we can do in the next 4 months.
Well, I agree. And I want to make a quick note to everybody that starting in August, my Burbank will once again do our election shows of Meet the Candidates. So we're going to invite you on. We'll let you decide when, in August or September, sometime in that area, and we'll talk about your assembly run. And anybody else out there, if you appear on the Burbank ballot in any race, we would love to have you on the show. Just drop us a note at news@myburbank and tell us we'd like to come on and do a podcast, and you're on. We don't care what, the Republican or Democrat or Green Party or or Dodger Party. Who knows? We want everybody to have that equal time. So,
well, it's funny. I say during our weekly, the week that was, the week that will be, we're in a great city. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can be fixed and so forth. We have a fantastic run city. Mm-hmm. You go from North Hollywood to Burbank, and it's exactly when you're in Burbank. And there's city functions and city personnel and so forth. And Mike Davis, a former fire chief, said, "Pretty amazing. You dial a 3-digit number, and you're guaranteed to see somebody at your house within 3 minutes." Not too many cities can say that. No. And we have a great police and fire department, and people need to get out. I saw our vice mayor on social media the other day was at the cultural market.
Oh, yeah.
I saw some pictures. That is getting to be a great place. I remember the planning of that. There's a lot going on in our community.
Oh, yeah.
Get involved in your community, because you know what? It's you that makes up this community.
That's right.
So
well said.
Okay. Well, we thank everybody for listening or watching. And, please, on the bottom of this YouTube video, you can send in a little something to us. If you want to donate some money, we'd appreciate it. So we want to ask everybody to take a look at that. And for Mayor Nick Schultz and for Ross Benz, this is Craig Sherwood saying we will talk to you again next month from a Burbank bus. Good night.
Thank you for watching the latest My Burbank video. If you have it in your heart, please consider helping us by clicking on the super thanks down below. Or even better, go to our channel and consider a membership. Your support is what keeps My Burbank going strong.